Hey, paisans, the time has come. On the air since 2009, the independently produced, non-FCC compliant champ of video game talk podcasting. Here comes Tiger Claw Radio. Here's your host, Critical Failure.
Welcome everybody to Tiger Claw Radio, show's Critical Failure. We've been away for a couple of weeks dealing with some domestic issues. But when we left off, Hemrawc was setting up to, Hemrawc had delivered some audio from a convention that he attended, and a lot of fun stuff. So that turned out to be unedited, and we needed to take care of that and get it ready. So Hemrawc was kind enough to put together quite a big recording. So that's going to be TCR for this week, is Hemrawc's convention recording in its entirety, and it runs pretty long. So big thanks to Hemrawc, and big thanks to everybody who stuck with us. Let's go there now. You're listening to Tiger Claw Radio.
Hey, paisans, it's Hemrawc. How you guys doing? So I am on my way to a little convention. I'm pretty pumped about it. To be honest, this is probably the most excited I've been in a while, probably since MagFest 2020. And to put that in perspective, that's January of 2020, before the pandemic hit the U.S. So it's been a couple years since I've gone to an expo, and I am headed to Waco, Texas, to the ATG Expo. You gotta love these guys' ambition. ATG stands for All Time Greatest, and I was trying to do some research before I was heading out, and I'm like, okay, well, what was this conference kind of like? Trying to look up YouTube videos. I can't find anything. So that makes me think that this is their first annual conference. It's your typical nerd conference, right? So you've got your video games. They do modern and old school. They also, of course, have tabletop. It looks like there's some Magic the Gathering that's going to happen. They have a few panels. It's kind of like a mini PAX South, if you will. They do have a few YouTubers who are showing up, one of which I sort of know, Weiss. He is more well known for his books than his YouTube channel, but he does have a YouTube channel. He's more focused on older systems, right? So pre-NES is, I believe, his specialty. So if you're into ColecoVision and television, Atari 2600, 5200, he's your guy. And again, he's an author. He's written multiple video game books. You may be familiar with Pat Contri and his thick volume, like NES and Super Nintendo review books. Well, this was the guy who was writing them before Pat Contri. So this guy also kind of has some similar review books, and he even wrote for Pat Contri, and I believe contributed to his first book. So I'm going to this guy's panel, so I'm going to Brett Weiss's panel. I'm pretty excited about that. He's going to be talking about the video game crash, and he actually lived through it. It's going to be cool to hear from a guy who was, I think, in his teenage years during 1983, and I always like kind of personal stories and anecdotes from video game history in general. Like I mentioned, on my way from South Texas to Waco, which is kind of central Texas, and I am taking a roundabout way. It's going to take me a while to get there, and I'm okay with that because I'm going to be hitting up a bunch of game stores on the way. So not going the direct route, which would take me straight through Austin. So not only would that impart a lot of traffic, but a lot of the gaming stores there, let me put it this way, the likelihood of you finding a good deal is pretty low. So I like to head out to these more rural locations, kind of off the beaten path. And my first stop is actually on the beaten path, so to speak. And that's in New Braunfels, Texas at the D-Pad. I've been there many times before. It's kind of my favorite local store. I don't go there as much as I used to because traffic has gotten increasingly bad. It used to only take me maybe 20-ish minutes. And now the whole round trip can take me 2 hours because the traffic's ridiculous. So again, on my way, and actually I'm hitting more traffic than I anticipated. I'm trying to leave in the middle of the day, hoping to avoid some of this. But in any case, I'll try to keep you guys updated, see if I find anything. And then from the D-Pad, I'll be heading out to Marble Falls, kind of in central Texas. It's a small town. Wonderful place. It's nice out there because it's by a big lake. So it's pretty as well. After the D-pad, going to Marble Falls and hitting up, I believe it's Hood's Game and Things. I've been there a few times as well. Certainly not as many as the D-pad, but I do occasionally find some good deals at Hood's. And they actually have 2 stores. One's in Marble Falls and one's in Kingsland, which is about 40 minutes away. So I'll try to hit both of those. I also want to add, similar to what I do for MagFest, is I created a little mixtape, if you will, of some chip tunes. And so I've been rocking out to that the last few days in preparation for this conference, really pumping myself up. And hopefully I can share some of those with you as we go along. But in any case, I will check back with you guys after the D-pad. Woo! And we are back. Yes. Just finished up at the D-pad. Got a story for you. Again, still pumped for this trip. In any case, as I said before, D-pad is one of my favorite places to go for retro gaming. So if you're in the New Braunfels, San Antonio area, and you're looking to pick up some games, I recommend it. Also, as you would expect, they do sell like board games and MTG stuff too. It's a one-stop shop for all you nerds out there. I may have mentioned on the Discord that I picked up some Famicom, Super Famicom games. I found a seller. He has his own website, but he also sells through eBay, where it's basically like, hey, you pay me $16 shipping, and you can just fill this box chock full of Famicom, Super Famicom games. And the games themselves are only a couple bucks a piece. Well, that's exaggerating. That it's usually like between like maybe $2 to $6 a piece. So they're pretty cheap, the games themselves. So I'm like, hey, if I'm gonna buy a box, I actually bought 2 boxes. I'm gonna fill them up, right? I bought a bunch of games. A lot of them, I genuinely wanted in my collection, but some of them I purposely bought so I could trade it in, right? So I'm like, okay, great. I got my games. I spent, who knows, maybe 2 hours sitting there with isopropyl alcohol and Q-tips, cleaning them all. And I'm like, okay, great. I'm going to bring it down to this local store in San Antonio. I was like, hey, I'm looking for some store credit. They're like, all right. So, they look at him, and then he's like taking pictures, sending it to his manager. He's like, hey, man, I got to get my manager to look at this. I'm like, all right. And it was a big spread. I want to say I probably had in the neighborhood about 15, 16 games. And I tried to pick high-quality games, so there were a lot of RPGs on them. Now, I understand that the RPGs are in Japanese, but hey, you can translate them. So if you got yourself a Retron 5 or a ROM dumper, you're in luck. And plus, people just like to collect those Super Famicom cards just because it says Final Fantasy VI in like Japanese. So, I had my Final Fantasies 4, 5, 6. I had Dragon Warrior 2, 3, 4. I had Seiken Densetsu 3. I had Genealogy of the Holy War. It's a Fire Emblem game. A Bomberman for the N64. So I tried to pick high-quality games. Now, again, they only cost me a few dollars because I was just filling up the box. So I'm like, I'm going to get my money back. This is taking place back in San Antonio. This is probably a month ago now. And the guy's like, all right, I heard my word back from the manager. We can offer you $30 store credit.
Correction. It was actually $35 store credit and $30 cash. But still.
I'm like, in my head, I was like, whoa, that was a lot lower than I expected. I was hoping like around $60 or more. Because I want to say 50, 60, I was probably breaking even. So I was like, no, I'm going to pass on that. So like, okay, no problem. I started listing them on eBay, and of course that takes my time, and then you've got to list them, you got to ship them, you have to cross your fingers that the United States Postal Service doesn't lose them, and I was able to sell some that way, and I don't know, I probably made $40 just selling some of them. But some of these Famicom games sit around a while, and that was one of the reasons they gave me such a low offer. They're like, hey man, these sit around a while, we can't sell them really fast, so I can't give you much. And I'm like, okay. So I get it. So I sold a few within a couple weeks, already made, $40-odd. Kind of happy with that. And I was like, I'm going on this trip. Let me take all the games I haven't sold yet and just put them in a box. I'm going to bring them to the D-pad with me. March over to the D-pad. I'm walking in with a box of games. I was like, hey, man, I just want to see what type of store credit I can get. I also had a bunch of DVDs in there because I'm just trying to clear out space of stuff I don't need. I have seasons almost 1 through 10 of The Simpsons. I think I'm missing season 8 And I cannot for the life of me find season 1 and 2. I don't know what happened to them. Any case, I'm bringing the Simpsons seasons, a few other random DVDs, because the D-pad also sells DVDs. I walk up there, and I'm like, hey, look for store credit. I start looking around, and then like, hey, we have an offer. I'm like, okay. Like, we can give you like $33 store credit. And I'm like, sweet. Now, that's only the games. They did tell me later on that they couldn't take the DVDs, which is fine. I'm actually going somewhere else that can take DVDs, so maybe I can get a little store credit there. So in any case, I picked up 3 Game Boy games. I kind of splurged. I had the store credit, so you're like, wow, you spent basically $11 per game? Yeah, sure. So what are the games I got? So the big one that I picked up was, let's see if I can remember, Kingdom Crusade. To be honest, I had never heard about it. And then I'm just kind of perusing their Game Boy selection, and I'm doing a lot of like eBay/GameFAQs, because I don't want to pick up a dud. We live in the information age. Might as well just know what I'm getting into. Looked up a few games there, and I came across Kingdom Crusade. I was like, that's kind of weird. I've never heard of this game. Apparently, it's actually a strategy game for the Game Boy. It got good user reviews on GameFAQs, because that's what I rely on the most. Kingdom Crusade, it's a strategy game. It kind of sounds like Heroes of the Realm, if you remember that for the PC, or Heroes of Might and Magic. It kind of gave me that type of feel when I was looking at the review and the pictures. And they wanted $18 for it. And I was like, man, that's pretty steep for a Game Boy game. Let me just see what it goes on online, like on eBay. So I'm looking at eBay, and actually $18 is probably either right at what it's worth or a little under what it's worth. So I was like, you know what? I like these guys. I've been going to this store probably at least since 2008, and it has metamorphosized over the years. Like, I remember going back in the day in this place. I love you guys, but it was a dump. There was dust everywhere. You were digging through like Genesis games, like in boxes. Stuff sometimes wasn't priced, so then you had to ask them what the price was. It was that type of place. But you could find some really good deals. And then what really cracks me up is they used to just sell like fountain drinks behind the counter. I was like, do you want a Red Bull with that Game Boy game there? We got it on tap, like stuff like that. But over the years, they've really transformed and become much more professional. So it's a very nice looking shop now. They even have a separate room for their Magic the Gathering stuff. There's a pre-release tonight. So it looks like there was a little bit of excitement already going on there. It's Friday today, so there's also, Friday Night Magic. That's when the pre-releases will go down. But that's beside the point. I picked up these Game Boy games. I got Kingdom Crusade, paid $18 for it. Kind of a splurge, but I had the credit, so let's do it. And then the other 2 I purchased. I've been meaning to pick up this game for a while and just never pulled the trigger. And it's a simple game. It's a very common game. And it's tennis. Tennis for the Game Boy. So I picked that up for, I think it was $7. Not the greatest price, but hey, whatever. And then Tetris Attack. So Tetris Attack has rave reviews for the Game Boy. And of course had a release for the Super Nintendo. I brought my Game Boy with me. I was trying to think, I was like, what should I bring with me? Am I going to bring the X18S? Am I going to bring my 3DS, my DS? And I was like, you know what? I'm going with my GB Boy Color. So this is the Game Boy knockoff that I've got, and it plays Game Boy games beautifully. It has a Game Boy slot. It's backwards compatible with Game Boy Color. And the screen, that's what I love. The screen is like an LCD type of screen, but you don't have to pay these outrageous prices for IPS screen mods. Like, they had some at the store. They wanted like $300 for these Game Boys. And I was like, hard pass. I'm sticking with my $40 GB Boy Color. Brought a few games. I kind of thought to myself, you know what? I'm going to throw a few extra cases, because I bet you I'm going to pick up some Game Boy games. So I threw 3 extra cases in my bag, and I've already filled those up. Well, I haven't put the games in them yet, but I just picked up 3 games, and I'm likely to pick up some more Game Boy games. Hopefully I can try some of those games out on the trip, although I'm a little hesitant because I'm kind of OCD with the cleanliness of my games. And I don't have any isopropyl alcohol and Q-tips with me, so I might wait on it. But just as an aside, what are the games that I brought with me to play on this trip? So I brought Zelda. It reminds me of my younger brother, who I don't see very often anymore. He lives in Europe. I talk to him every once in a while. But in any case, he really liked Zelda Link's Awakening for the Game Boy. And I still have our original cart. I mean, technically I think it was both of ours, but he was the one who played it more than I did. And so I have the original cart, which was a Game Boy cart, but they re-released the cartridge for Game Boy Color. So it's a black cartridge, has better visuals, and I believe has an extra dungeon. And so in his honor, I started a save file with his name on it, and I played it months ago, and I really haven't picked it up to play it again. So I'm like, you know what, let's throw that in the bag. Maybe I'll sit down and play it tonight, because the con doesn't start till tomorrow morning. Actually, it doesn't open till 10. I don't have to wake up early or do any of the crazy stuff I used to do for PAX. Going back to the games I brought with me, I got Zelda Link's Awakening. I brought Final Fantasy Legends 2. It's a cool little Game Boy game. It's not going to blow your mind, but for the time, and if you only had a Game Boy, then this is a great game to have. And I apologize if my voice is cracking. My throat's a little dry, and I'm going to go on another quick tangent. Excuse me as I'm sipping some water. This is Tiger Claw radio style. And let me not miss my turn here. I'm taking some back roads I'm not very familiar with. I'm trying to record in the car. It's not really a van, so I don't want to call it a van cast. I guess we can call it a Prius cast. In the faithful old Prius. Oh, that water's good. Okay, going back to the Game Boy games, we talked about Final Fantasy Legends 2. If you just had a Game Boy back in the day and you were itching for a RPG, it's a great one to have. All right, hold on. Coming up with a traffic light in the middle of nowhere, South Texas. Okay. Driving behind this trailer. Hold on. All right. Got some more water. More water in the system. Final Fantasy Legends 2, which is actually part of the Mana series, if you don't know. It's not technically part of Final Fantasy. Oh, did I say Secret of Mana? I mean the Saga. It's part of the Saga series, not the Mana series. What else did I bring? Man, I'm doing this off my memory. I just stuffed them in my bag last night. Man, what did I bring? Oh! I also brought Puyo Puyo. So, going back to that box from Japan, or 2 boxes from Japan, I had a couple Game Boy games in there, and one of them was Puyo Puyo. So I imagine it doesn't really take much translation to play Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine on the Game Boy. And I haven't really gotten into it, so hey, it's a little puzzle game. Let's throw it in the bag. And I know there's at least one more game. What was it? If it comes to me, I might tell you later, but it's not coming to me. We're talking about the D-pad. Great experience at the D-pad. I did see some cool stuff. So, cool things to mention was, this may be the first time I've ever seen this. I saw a TRS-80 game. And I didn't even know they had cartridges for it, but they do. So they were selling this, like a TRS-80 game. I don't think it was like $3. And I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. They had a lot of Intellivision. They had a lot of boxed Intellivision games. I was kind of impressed by that. I'm just now starting to look at Coleco Intellivision. Maybe because I've been watching too many of Brett Weiss's videos. He's the Coleco guy. He's one of the ones that'll be there at the ATG Expo. Again, looking forward to his panel. But what else did I see at the D-pad? Oh, they have multiple cases that they keep, I guess, high-value items. One of the cases was chock full of indie Dreamcast games. And I was kind of impressed. I was like, whoa, this is the stuff that you would, have to buy online, and usually it's from Germany or something, and you gotta wait 2 months for it to come in, and then pay 20 euros in shipping, and the game itself costs 30 euros. And And then by the time you do all the calculations, you spent like $60 on one Dreamcast game. So I bet they bought them in bulk, and they were selling them for $40 a pop. So that was a no-go for me. Not that I don't like Dreamcast games, but let's be honest, I got a lot of Dreamcast games I haven't really played much. So I should probably knock those out before I start looking for some indie titles. But that was kind of cool. I like the store because they do have a decent import section, so I did kind of look at that. And I was tempted at this one Super Famicom game. Looked like this racing game. The name isn't on the top of my head, but I ended up not picking it up. I just stuck with the Game Boy games, especially since I was kind of splurging with this Kingdom Crusade. So anyways, I'm going to let you guys go, and I'll meet up with you after we hit up Hood's Gaming Things. But while you are waiting, I want to leave you with a chiptune. So as I mentioned, I made a little mixtape, and all the songs on this mixtape came from... Woo! There's my voice cracking again. Let me get some water. Hold up. Woo! Feels good. Okay. Whoa. All right. We're on track. Again, narrow roads. All the songs on the playlist are from the 8-Bit Collective. As many of you guys know, that closed down years ago. Some hero of the internet was able to... I don't know if he just downloaded all the songs before they went down, or this was like a prior download, maybe a year before it went down. But in any case, there's like... it's definitely over a gigabyte. Maybe it's like 2 or 3 gigabytes worth of chiptunes. And it's all on archive.org. And you can actually, you don't even have to download it all. You can just listen to it on 8-Bit Archive. And that's primarily what I do. And then I just download the songs I like. In any case, I've been going through those to make a ultimate 8-Bit Collective Top 40. And I'm still working on it. I know I've been talking about this probably for like a year now. But I haven't forgotten about the project. And I haven't given up on the project. It just kind of gets pushed down on the agenda. Give you an idea of where I'm at, they list the songs alphabetically and numerically. I've gotten through the numbers, and I have gotten through the first A through Z or A through Z, if you're one of those people. All right, hold on, people. I got to make a turn here. Oh, okay, I'm getting on a road I actually recognize. Okay, great. I love it. Okay, all right. So we are on a slightly bigger road, but still kind of in the middle of nowhere, which is awesome. So back to the 8-Bit Collective. I was working through, listening to the songs kind of one by one, and I've gotten through the numbers, and I got through the first A through Z, or A through Z, whatever you want to say. But then it goes again, A through Z, but this time lowercase. So I am on my second A through Z, and I'm on the D's. So that's where I am. I'm probably at least 2/3 through. Whoa, I'm talking too much. I'm losing my voice. I'm at least 2/3 through. But it might be months before I'm able to get that top 40 compilation out. But anyways, let me leave you with one of the songs that is on my mixtape for the ATG Expo. And this is going out in honor of our dear friend Drabka. So as you know, he speaks German. I don't, but I'm going to do my best here. This song is entitled Auf Wiedersehen, and it is by an unknown artist, as many of these songs from the 8-Bit Collective are. Sit back, listen to this song, and I'm going to get back with you guys once I am done at Hood's Gaming Things. Take care. we are back. What did you think about that song? It started a little weak in my opinion, maybe the first few seconds, then all of a sudden it turns amazing. That was Auf Wiedersehen, also known as Goodbye, by unknown artists from the 8-Bit Collective. So I just visited Hood's Games in Marble Falls, and I'm headed to their second store. I have, maybe 10 more minutes, and it's in a city further down the road. I picked something up, but then I quickly returned it. As we talked about before, I've got this Gameboy kick. I saw Motocross Mania 2 for the Game Boy Color. And I remember playing the original game as a kid. I don't know what happened to that cartridge. I think that may have been one of the cartridges that got stolen from me when I was growing up. But anyways, I heard that the second one was just as good, if not better, than the original. So I picked it up. I was in my car getting ready to leave, and I was looking at the back of the cartridge, because as you know, those Game Boy Color cartridges are semi-translucent, so you can actually see the board. And I noticed that there was these splotches on the board. And I'm like, this can't be good. It's well, I gotta test it. I know I didn't clean it. Its pins are probably nasty, but I decided just to shove it into my GB Boy that I had in the car, and it didn't work. Go figure. But thankfully I was still there. I had the receipt. I walked right back in. I was like, hey man, look at this card. I tested it out. It's not working. And he very quickly gave me a refund. So that was nice of him. Nice guy. Chatted a little. I asked him if they were doing a pre-release, and he's like, yeah, we're going to do it tomorrow at noon. I'm like, oh, okay. And he's like, I've been doing this for years, and I'm sick and tired of these late night pre-releases to 2, 3, 4 in the morning. I'm done. And I was like, understood. It must wear you out. And he's like, yeah, sure does. So they are also doing their pre-release because, like many game stores around here, it's kind of a Magic the Gathering video game combo. So they have a little card shop on the side, so to speak. And I also looked in my pack and saw the other Game Boy game that I had forgotten. So it's Choplifter 2. That's the other one that I threw in there. I like the original Choplifter. That's been on every system of the 80s for the most part. And I really like the Sega Master System version, if I had to choose a version. And one of the things I like about retro gaming is sometimes you get this accidental bonus content. And that's what I got with this cartridge. Someone took a piece of paper and wrote a bunch of the codes on the piece of paper and then taped that to the back of the cartridge. So now I've got these codes on the back of the cartridge. I just think that's cool. When it comes to the manual and someone's written notes or their passcodes or what have you, to me that's accidental bonus content. And that's one of the perks to retro gaming. Gives me the warm fuzzies, Well, I don't have a whole lot of time before I get to the next store, but I will catch up with you guys then. Take it easy. And alrighty, folks, we are back. So just finished up with Hood's Gaming Things in Kingsland, Texas. Had a great time. I basically had the store to myself, and the owner was super chatty. So it was just good hearing some interesting stories. All right, got another turn here, guys. Don't want to miss it. We are off to Copper's Cove. Although it's kind of spelled Copper's Cove, but everyone says Copper's Cove. And it's going to take us about an hour to get there. Rest assured, I will not be talking for that entire hour to you. But I do kind of want to tell you and take you along with my adventures here. Okay, so we made the right turn. Wow, this is kind of crazy. Got on a narrow road in the middle of nowhere. Whoa, that is a truck. Okay, all right, we're good. I'm out here driving a Toyota Prius in truck land, so I am a small ant amongst giants. Surprised that there's this much traffic, but whatever. Now, a question for you guys is, what do you think about brick and mortar stores selling repros? Because these guys sell repros, and I kind of have mixed feelings about it. One, it's illegal. If you're going by the strictest definition of the law, I'm sure the cops aren't busting in shutting down their store. And two, it can cause some confusion because I was looking at a Chrono Trigger cartridge and they wanted $70 for it. And I'm like, well, first of all, I wasn't interested in buying it. I was kind of just looking at prices. I was like, hey, $70? That seems reasonable. And then I started kind of looking closer. I'm like, wait a minute, this looks a little off. And I'm pretty sure it was a repro. And then I saw carts that I knew for a fact were repros. I think they really need to, if they're going to sell them, they need to distinguish it. Like have a sticker saying repro or bootleg, if you want to use that terminology. Wow. So getting fully immersed once again, going through a place that must have been devastated by a forest fire because it looks like we're in Mortar now. And again, these roads are still winding. Lost my train of thought. Oh yeah, repros. So what do you guys think? Is that cool to sell repros? I know there are some stores out there that is a faux pas. You don't sell repros. And then there's some stores that probably sell repros and don't realize that they have repros because someone traded them in. But I'm confident this store does. I should have asked the owner to see what she thought. Let's talk about the things that I picked up. So I did actually buy a few games. I know the store back in Marble Falls was kind of I wouldn't say a loss, but I didn't really pick anything up. You know, I tried to pick up that Gameboy game, and thankfully I had the smarts to actually take a look at it in my car and test it out, and it didn't work. But I did pick up a few things at the Kingsland store. The first thing, I did something I haven't done in probably years. It may have been over 5 years since I have bought an NES game. Not a Famicom game, an NES game. And I purchased an NES game. I've never seen it before, so that's what intrigued me. I've been collecting retro games for, I don't know, the better part of 15, maybe even 20 years. Wait, let's think about that. No, closer to 15. And I saw this game, and I'm like, whoa, I've never seen this before. Most of the time when I go into stores, I can kind of glance through the NES games, and I'm like, hey, I've seen that. And like NES now is almost like an afterthought, because I've essentially got the vast majority of what I can reasonably obtain. Yeah, it would be nice to have a legit copy of Little Samson because I do want to play that game. It looks a lot like Mega Man, and it seems a lot of fun, but I don't want to pay $1,000 or however much it costs now. So, that's off the table. Most of the NES games now come into like two categories. Category one, I don't want it, not interested in it, and category two, I'm interested in it, but I already have it, so it's a moot point. So I tend not to be in that market. Usually the NES portion of the store is not something I get excited about anymore. But I was like, hey, you know what? I've got time to burn. I'm actually ahead of schedule. So let's sit back and look at some NES games, especially in a store like this, because you actually might find a deal. And I did. And this game is entitled Shinjin the Ruler. And I did have my cell phone on me, of course, so I did like a quick game fact search. I'm like, wait, this looks like one of those Romance of the Three Kingdom games, but it could be a dud. And let's just see what the reviews have to say. And it got some good reviews. I looked at some of the photos. I'm like, yeah, it looks kind of like a Romance of the Three Kingdoms game, but it appears that the combat is turn-based, more in the style of Fire Emblem, I guess. Except I suspect that RPG elements are not heavy character by character. It sounds like it's an army building game, and those armies play out on battlefields that are turn-based. So it also looks like it's got a high learning curve. Now, the thing about this game is I picked it up, and I kind of shook it a little, and I heard something rattling around in there. And I was like, oh no, that might be part of the board that came off. Let's not make that mistake, because granted, they may have a great return policy, but I'm not coming out here for who knows when. So I don't want to be 100 miles away and realize, oh yeah, my copy of Shinjin the Ruler doesn't work. So I asked the lady, I was like, hey, do you guys have like a system you could just test this out on for me? I hear something rattling in there. And she was super nice. She was like, I don't have anything hooked up now, but hey, look, I've got an NES here. I'm going to hook it up real quick for you and we'll test it out. So I'm like, great. And she plugs the thing in, and it doesn't work. She does that little shifty motion trying to get the NES to work. It's not working. And then she does something that makes me cringe, but I used to do it too. She picked up the card and blew in it. I'm like, oh, don't do that. Because I'm sure you know, when you blow in the cartridge, it does oftentimes make it work, but it's because of the moisture on your breath creating a better contact with the 72-pin connector. If you do that a lot over time, that moisture can actually cause the pins in the cartridge, and perhaps even the pins in the connector, to kind of corrode. And it's best just to use rubbing alcohol, or I've even heard like a magic eraser or something similar to scrub the pins, because that way it cleans them, but doesn't leave a residue that's going to corrode it. That's beside the point, though. So she does all this. She even brings it in the back and opens it up, and then she finds the piece and she shows it to me. She's like, hey, it looks like it's just a piece of the cartridge, not like a piece from the board. And I was like, oh, okay, that makes me feel better. And then she actually pulls out an eraser and starts trying to clean it, goes back to the NES, plugs it in, same thing. It's not working. It's not even booting up a picture. It's just kind of like fuzzy. So I said, hey, I'm not going to be able to return this. Would you give me like a deal? And I said, hey, would you give me half price? And I don't think she particularly liked that. I mean, the game's not that expensive. It's $9, right? So she goes back to her computer. She's like, hey, let me see what I can do for you. She was like, I can sell it to you for $5. So I was like, okay, that's fine. I mean, that's essentially half price anyways, or close to it. So I picked up Shinjin the Ruler for $5. I'm pretty happy about it. I'm looking forward to plugging this into the Retron 5. I know it is Famicom-uary, and to be honest, I haven't been playing many Famicom games. It's close enough, right? It's like a Famicom. So we got that. And then also, I've been looking for this game. It's been on my radar. I actually have a safe search on eBay for it. And it is Bounty Hounds for the PSP. Picked it up for $13, which was a pretty good find. From my quick research, it typically goes for over $20. And it looks like it's got the case, no manual. That's fine. I would have been happy with just the game. And so what is Bounty Hounds? Bounty Hounds is a action RPG, from my understanding, on the PSP in a quasi-fantasy/sci-fi setting. Happy about that. And then, this is unique, guys. It just plays into this whole theme. Hold on. I almost missed a turn. Thankfully, there's not much traffic. Crisis averted. I'm in some small town I do not recognize. And I can't quite tell on my map. But anyways, let's talk about this other item that I'm excited about. This is unusual. It is a book. I bought a book at a game store. Yes, I'm a nerd. And it was funny too. So I got talking to her because I'm over there looking at it, and it's actually multiple books. I think they had 3 different books. It's all by the same author. And the author is Brett Weiss. And that's the guy I was talking about earlier. That's the guy that's going to be at ATG Expo. He is a known author of video game books. It seems like his specialty is pre-NES. I was looking at his books. They had 3 different books of his that were over there. The book I'm most interested in, and it's entitled The 100 Greatest Console Video Games, 1977 to 1987. And I'm like, cool. So that takes into account not only the NES, but the stuff that came before it. It's already signed by the author, and maybe when I see him at ATG Expo, I can get him to personalize it for me. I'm pretty happy with it. It's a nice hardback book, coffee table style book, if you know what I'm talking about. Those are things that I picked up. Let's think about some other stuff that I encountered in that store. I saw Wall Street Kid for the NES, and I was pretty close to picking that up. I think they wanted like $8 for it, but I passed on it. It's been one of these games that's been on my radar for years. An old podcast I used to listen to, and I've mentioned this podcast multiple times over writing into Tiger Claw Radio, but the Nintendo Retrocast is what it's called. That really kick-started my kind of retro gaming craze around 2008. Maybe no, even further back than that, probably 2007. Love the show. And I remember they used to have this segment called Game of the Week. And one of the games of the week was Wall Street Kid. And the host talked it up. I was like, oh, well, that actually sounds pretty good. And of course, I went and I looked up some reviews on GameFAQs while I was in the store. And they were very mixed. It was like you either gave it a 1 or a 10. So I was like, I've got plenty of games. I probably don't need to be buying any games, to be honest. So let's just pass on this, and I'll stick with my Shinjin. Am I saying that right? Let's pull this out. Shinjin the Ruler, yeah. Shinjin the Ruler and Bounty Hounds. I think that's about all I have for you. I am headed off to Copper's Cove for a game to visit the Game Exchange. Before I go, let's talk a little bit about Game Exchange. So I used to live in Central Texas. I used to live north of Austin in a smaller town, and they had a Game Exchange. I picked up so much stuff from this Game Exchange, and thank goodness, too, because it was a period of time a little bit before retro gaming hit its peak. So it was still gaining in popularity, but it was popular. Like, YouTube was doing its thing. This store just hadn't quite caught on yet, so they didn't quite always know what they had. And I got some great deals. One that sticks out in my mind is Tomba for the PS1. My younger brother, who I mentioned earlier, he had a knack for picking out awesome games at Blockbuster back in the 90s. And one of the games he picked up, I don't know, like if it was just on a whim or he sat there and read like the backs and looked at the photos like, oh yeah, this is going to be good. But one of the games that he picked up was Tomba. I can still remember playing that back in the day, renting it from Blockbuster. For better or for worse, it has become a cult classic, and I want to say that's now a $50 to maybe even $100 game. I haven't checked the prices recently. I found this game at the Game Exchange for $12. And even then, it was more than that. It was at least $20, if not $30. So I was, oh, sweet. And I have plenty of other stories if I actually sit down and try to think about games that I thankfully picked up before they went up in value. And there's actually some games I passed on that I kind of wish, I should have picked it up. That's Game Exchange. And Game Exchange has changed over time. I went to a Game Exchange, when was the last time I went to one? Because there's not a Game Exchange where I currently live. Not one that's close by. The closest one would be maybe 2.5 hours away. But I did go, I know for sure I went in the summer of 2020 because I had a big road trip and I stopped at some Game Exchanges then. And let me tell you, their store has changed. And unfortunately, I think it's a sign of them not doing very well. So usually when a store has to start selling a bunch of plushies and cell phones, it's kind of a red flag that, hey, the video game business might not be doing so well for them. I will say that they've always sold cell phones. That was, at least since I've been going, it's been part of their business model. They sold cell phones and video games and DVDs. They have tons and tons of DVDs. Movies, games, cell phones, that was their deal. Now it's much more into Magic the Gathering, plushies, those little bobblehead things, all this stuff that kind of has this crossover with nerd culture, but to be honest, I'm not really into plushies. Maybe I'm a bad person for doing this, but when I pick up Magic the Gathering cards, I'm usually buying them online and not from my local game store like a good boy should. But in any case, they have raised their prices, I noticed. It's not this store that you go to and expect really good deals every time you go. But, that's okay. I think they still had one of their deals that I love. So it sounds like a sale, like something you would expect on Black Friday or something, but no. It was every day, if you bought 2 games that were less than $7.99 or whatever, you can get a third game for free. when I was in there in in the summer of 2020, they still had those deals. That's often how I bought games when I did circa 2011. But I think they've stopped doing that. And even back in 2020 when I was there, the prices have gone up. So anyways, it's been good chatting. Hopefully you're enjoying this. I don't know, it's been fun talking. I might be talking to a brick wall, but it's been fun. Really would like to hear some feedback. I'm not sure how this is going to get you guys. I might run it by Critical Failure and see if he wants to host on his show. I mean, it's his show, and like, this is going to be at least an hour long once I start linking all these segments together. But he might not want to do it. I totally respect that. But if he wants to throw it up on TCR, that'd be cool. In typical TCR fashion, let me leave you with a chiptune. This is a chiptune from the ATG Expo mixtape, from the 8-Bit Collective. It is from what I would consider an underrated chiptune artist. This guy is gold. Like, seriously, if you're in need of some good chiptunes, go to the 8-Bit Collective archive on archive.org and look up Serrer or C-Error. I'm not sure how it's pronounced, but it's spelled the letter C as in Charlie, and then error. But it's one word. So Serrer, I don't know, man. Two of his tracks actually made it on the mixtape. But I'm just going to play you one, and let me make sure I get this name right. I'm going to bring it up. So this one is entitled Cheeky Girls Fast Food. Again, that's Cheeky Girls Fast Food by Serrer. Please enjoy it, and I will see you on the flip side after I hit Game Exchange. Take care. All right, and we are back. So what did you guys think about that tune? Pretty good one, if I do say so myself. That was from Serrer. And I have... Uh-oh, hold on. Backing up here. Sounds like I drive a dump truck. Okay. Okay, let's get back on the road. I have finished at my first game exchange. And I also stopped at Subway. So I picked myself up a nice veggie sandwich. Really looking forward to it. I'm going to try to chow down on it after I kind of give you guys an update. Subway holds a special place in my heart, as I used to go there quite frequently. And then I got married, and my wife does not like Subway. So I sort of stopped going. So since I'm by myself, hey, let's hit up Subway. And I have this classic veggie sandwich that I make, or I tell them to make the same every single way, and it tastes about the same every single time. And I'm really jonesing for it. The next game exchange actually isn't very far away. It's only about 15 minutes. The last one, kind of a bust as far as pickups. I didn't get anything. I don't like to buy stuff just to buy stuff. Generally speaking, if I purchase a video game, it's a game that I would want to play. As I mentioned before, the prices have been raised. For instance, I looked at their Game Boy games. They actually had Turrican for the Game Boy. I don't see that one very often, so I'm like, oh, okay, cool. How much is that? $25. They also had Joe and Mac. $20. I'm like, Then I kind of dug through some of the others, but nothing really stood out. Wandered around the store for quite a while, but nothing really caught my eye. I thought about picking up a Star Wars game, one of those Lego Star Wars games for the Xbox. But to be honest with you, I think I recently picked one up, but I can't quite remember. That sounds stupid, but the last time I went game hunting and I didn't update my phone, it tells you that I have too many games, I guess. So I didn't pick it up. What else? They had a lot of ColecoVision games and quite a few Intellivision games. Maybe it's because I'm looking now and I never really gave them much of a thought previously. And I was like, oh, maybe they're like $1 or $2 a piece. Nah, they're running like $5 a piece. So I was like, no, I'm not going to pick that up. I don't even own an Intellivision. I have one of those plug-and-play ColecoVisions, but I don't have one that takes a cartridge. One of the things that surprises me, so we have all these retro-esque clone consoles, especially for the NES, Super Nintendo, Genesis, but we don't really have much for anything before the NES. I understand that Hyperkin has the Retron 77, which plays 2600 games, and that's cool and all, but why haven't we seen a console that has both 2600 Intellivision and ColecoVision, like all in one? Boom. Surely someone has thought of it. It can't be that difficult. If you can pull off a Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis, NES clone system, and that was done years ago, why not something a little older? I understand the market's not as great as, say, the 8-bit, 16-bit stuff, but also talked to one of the workers there just about like what they're selling, what consoles they sell the most of, type of thing. The clerk mentioned, oh, hey, we got this console that can just play Game Boy games. I think it's really cool. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I know what you're talking about. And actually, Critical Failure mentioned this system as well. It looks like a small little cube. It's about the size of an Ouya. I was like, hey, and this clerk was like, I own one. I'm like, oh, that's cool. Does it have the Super Game Boy features? Like you plug an original Game Boy, say like Donkey Kong. That's a great example. You plug it into a regular Game Boy, it'll play. But if you plug it into a Super Game Boy, it up-reses the colors, so it gives you more colors, even more than what you would expect from a Game Boy Color. And then on top of that, you get these nice little backgrounds, or bezels, really. The clerk was like, I don't know. I was hoping to get a more firm answer. Because if I remember correctly, the Retron 5 does have the Super Game Boy features. So, didn't pick anything up there. And that's okay. Trying to think of anything else worth noting. It's true that Game Exchange really has broadened their horizons as far as the stuff they sell. So not only do they sell video games, movies, and Magic the Gathering, oh no. They've gone not one step, but 2 or 3 steps beyond that. They now sell, they still sell cell phones. And it's funny, the time I was in there, 2 people came in there looking for cell phones, and they both got turned away because they didn't really have any cell phones, which I'm kind of surprised that the demand out there is so high. But they sell Legos, if you can believe that. Of course, they sell plushies and those funny-looking bobbleheads. They sell posters. And this one is the kicker. They sell Nerf Guns. So, just in case you need some video games, DVDs, a plushie, and Nerf Guns, it's a one-stop shop, baby. Come on down to your local game exchange, pick up your Nerf Guns. However, I didn't see any ammunition. I saw the guns, but I'm like, where's all the ammunition? Maybe they keep that behind the counter. And for good reason, because when I was there were definitely kids just running around. I saw a guitar behind the counter, and again, I'm just chatting up the clerks. And I was like, so you guys sell guitars? Like, oh yeah, we sell guitars. And he's like, this one's been here a while. It's been here a year. And I'm like, oh. He's like, yeah, we want $350 for it because it's a Yamaha. And I was like, okay. So anyways, I think that's going to do it for now. I only have a few more minutes to go until I hit my next stop. And I'm thinking I might just peruse really quickly and then leave so I can get on to eating and then also the next store, which I believe is a little bit further than the distance between these two. I will catch you on the flip side. I'll also bring up at least one more chiptune before we conclude this little saga of Hemrawc's video game hunting / ATG Expo tour. I'm hoping to do a little bit of filming and maybe I can post something on the Discord because like I said, there's nothing on YouTube about this expo. I'm guessing it's their first one. But in any case, I'll finally let you go and I'll meet you after I hit up this game exchange. Peace. And we are back. Yes, sir. We have just finished at the most recent game exchange. And guess what? Didn't buy anything. Big surprise. Came across a few things that I was a little tempted. I saw Pinot B for the GBA for, I don't know, $6. I've heard good things. It's this platformer with a weird name. You play as a bipedal bee, and it was originally released for the PlayStation. The GBA was a follow-up to it. Also saw Top Gear Rally for the GBA. I think it's a pretty good racing game, but not enough to pull the trigger. I saw Theme Park for the Sega Genesis. Do you want to hazard a guess how much that would set you back? All right. I hope you have a figure in your mind. They wanted $70. And I was like, hard pass. They also had Hammering Harry for the PSP for a measly $100. I do have to say that store has changed quite a bit. I do remember going to it when I lived in this area, and they have really changed things around. Not only has the merchandise changed, but actually the way they configure the store is different. They have a large display for t-shirts, which I don't remember at all. Have a little area for Warhammer and miniatures. And that wasn't there before, so whatever. It's all good. The place smelled like weed, so I even saw the clerk going around and spraying as I was there. So headed off to my old game store. So this is the one that I went to a lot when I lived here. It's about 25 minutes away. I'm looking forward to it. Hopefully I can get there before it closes. But in the meantime, I want to leave you with one more chiptune. And this is actually my favorite one of the mixtape. And it is entitled, I'm going to look this up so I don't get it wrong. It's a little bit different. It's UB1P, IB2P. So a little play on words, but I'm player one, you're player two, that thing. And it is performed by Chibi Tech. Again, this is my favorite song on the mixtape. Hope you enjoy it. And I will see you after the next store. Hey, we are back again. And I just finished up at the last game exchange. Finally got on the interstate, headed the right way. And I got to that game exchange about 20 minutes before it closed. So just in the nick of time to kind of browse. It's fun going back to that store. So as I mentioned, that's the store I used to go to when I lived around here. The layout actually hasn't changed that much. I did notice that they put bars on the back windows. When I lived over here, I kind of knew the manager, mainly because I went there so often. One day, I go to the store, this is years ago, and I go to the store, and the manager's like, dude, you won't believe what just happened. And I was like, oh man, what's going on? Because you could tell that the back of the store was like a wreck. And he's like, we got robbed. Somebody had cut their power cable, so that knocked out all the power to the store, so it shut off their security system. And then they have these back windows. Now, those back windows do not face to a parking lot. I'm not sure how to even get back there. But they're not well visualized from the road. Basically, they cut the power, and then they broke the windows and got into the store that way. It sounded like they primarily went after the cell phones, so they stole the cell phones. I mean, that was really unfortunate, but I did notice now they have bars on those back windows. 3 game exchanges, and I guess 3 strikes you're out, because I didn't pick anything up. Really didn't see anything that struck my fancy. Once again, I'm starting to notice a lot more, like, older stuff. Like, they had boxed television games. Of course, 2600, even a few ColecoVision games. I was like, oh yeah, that's neat. I did see a few things that you might be interested in, just from a price standpoint. I saw the most expensive Atari 2600 card I have ever come across in a store. The title was Sword Quest Waterworld. Never heard of it before. I should do some research when I get to Waco. But they wanted $200 for that cartridge. And I was like, oh man. That's the most, like I said, that's the most expensive 2600 cartridge I have ever seen in a store. Now, I also found Alfred Chicken for the NES. And it makes me chuckle because that was kind of thought to be a possible mascot for Tiger Fest. I was surprised at how expensive that one was. So come up with a number in your mind before I tell you. But they wanted 100 big ones. A 100 for Alfred Chicken on the NES. I didn't realize that game was rare. Or, I mean, I didn't realize it was that rare, I should say. I knew it wasn't common. That's kind of cool when you see these rare games. Even if they're for a price I wouldn't be willing to pay. It's just kind of neat to see them. I did kind of chat with the employees a little. So I'm talking to these guys. I'm like, okay, what consoles do you guys sell? And at first he was like, you mean sell or do you mean buy? I was like, both. Well, we buy a lot of 360s and we buy a lot of Wiis. We'd probably get one 360 in a day. But he says they go pretty fast. Although I just saw a handful of them at the store, so it wasn't like they were out of stock. And I'm like, well, what about your Wiis? He's like, dude, we can't get rid of those things. We've got like 70 of them. Back in Kingsland, when I was at Hood's Games, I was talking to that owner, and she was telling me that she can't get enough Wiis. Like, the Wiis will not stay on the shelf. She said they used to have a huge backlog, and then when the pandemic hit, all of a sudden everybody wanted Wiis, and they sold out. That was kind of interesting because, to be honest, we're not that far away. And I guess the demographics or the needs of the population differ that much. Well, I think I'm going to wrap it up for tonight. I'm about 30 minutes away from Waco. It's late. It's past 9 o'clock. And I'm not sure how much more I'm going to do with this Vancast, or Prius cast, whatever you want to call it. But I suspect this will not be my last recording. it will be my last recording for today unless something crazy happens. So I wish you well, and I will talk to you tomorrow. Hey folks, Hemrawc back here again. Just finished up with ATG Expo, and I am tired, so I'm really not going to say too much. I haven't even eaten dinner yet, so just picked up some dinner. I'm going to go decompress and eventually fall asleep, but did have a good time. I hope to make it again. I do have some stuff to share, and I will catch up with you guys later. Good morning, folks. I am back. I am headed back, and I want to try to recap the ATG Expo. Before I get to that, as you may have noticed in my last recording, I was just feeling a little under the weather. I had that headache, which had been bothering me better part of the whole day. It was just this fatigue. I was actually a little afraid I was sick. And I think all I really needed was a good night's sleep. So woke up, feel like a new man, and I am back to talk about ATG Expo. So I'm just going to take you through my day. I woke up before the conference started. So the conference didn't start till like 10. And I want to say I was up by like 7:38. So I had a little bit of time to burn. Pulled out the trusty Gameboy, or GB Boy Color, whatever you want to call it, and played a little Puyo Puyo, and realized I'm horrible at that game, but it was still kind of fun. Then I got to the convention a bit early, and I decided to do like a little filming, to kind of film like outside the convention. And let me tell you, when I got to Waco, I must have crossed the Arctic Circle, because it was freezing. Probably not literally freezing, but it felt really cold, and I did not pack great cold weather gear. So I have on like a light jacket and some very thin long pants. And it's also very, very windy. So windy, in fact, that the street lights were literally moving up and down. I should have filmed that. That was pretty impressive. Anyways, get there. The first place that I went to was the vendor show floor. It was a reasonably sized show floor for a relatively small show, and I did confirm that this is their first year. So this is the very first year of the all-time greatest expo. Love it. I saw a YouTuber there. I think he primarily does Twitch streaming now, but he goes by the handle G to the next level. Super cool guy. Chatted with him a bit. He was out there with his friend, and they had a little booth selling some games. And I will say, so there was a lot of people selling games, of course, that the games were actually reasonably priced for a conference. That's 2 thumbs up. But spoiler alert, I didn't buy anything. So, I'm okay with that. I was looking to have a low budget on this trip, which so far I have accomplished, and I'm pretty happy about that. But in any case, G to the next level, he's a cool guy. He actually has a panel today that I'm missing. I really would have liked to go to that panel, and it was entitled The Genesis of Retro Gaming. Would have been interested to see what that was about. Who knows, it might show up on YouTube. They did have a professional video crew there that was filming the convention. So I imagine some of this is going to go up on a YouTube channel or maybe Twitch or something. Actually, now that I think about it, I think the G to the next level guy did mention that his little panel would be on his Twitch stream. I suppose at least for a few days. Then also at his booth he had a Sega Genesis hooked up with Sonic 2. This is a little bit later in the conference, but I kind of circled back and eventually I just sat down and played a little Sonic 2 and remembered how bad I am at Sonic games, or at least Sonic 2. Another booth that was right next to his was Premium Edition. And I gotta say, these guys have enthusiasm. I've never really heard of Premium Edition before, but it's basically like a smaller, limited run games. They produce physical editions for the Nintendo Switch. They had multiple games there, some of which I believe were sold out on their online store, so this was the only way to pick them up. Or at least that's the drift that I got. And I actually filmed this guy for about 3 minutes talking about Premium Edition. Really nice guy, very enthusiastic about his product, and I enjoyed that. I did quite a bit of filming, and maybe I'll throw together like a montage video or something. Who knows? It might end up being nothing, but got some ideas. Premium Edition, if you're into physical media collecting for the Switch, definitely a company you want to check out. Premium Edition. There was also an animator there. So it was an artist by the name of Greg Peters, and to be honest, I'd never heard of him before, but he was the guy who animated the Animaniacs. And I talked to him for a little while, and he actually came up with the original look of the Animaniacs. So I was like, oh wow, he actually lives in Waco. So that was kind of crazy. He's also animated Timon and Pumbaa from The Lion King, as well as Dilbert. Quite the resume for a local guy. Now, I will say, I think he used to live in LA, and he has since moved to Waco. But that was cool that he was there, and he was out drawing. He had a bunch of his art out. And again, I took some video of that, and you may see that on a montage video. Another person that I ran into there was Brett Weiss. So I mentioned this as I was driving up to the con. And he is a journalist, an author. He has published multiple video game related books, kind of these coffee table style books, really nice, hardback. His latest book is the Nes Omnibus. So the Nes collection is so large, he divided the books into two. So he has an Omnibus Volume 1 and then an Nes Omnibus Volume 2, which is coming out, I believe, in a few months. Super nice guy, chatted him up for a while. He was kind of giving me kind of the lowdown, his sales pitch, showing me all his stuff, and he's like, oh, I also have a YouTube video, channel. And I was like, oh yeah, I've actually found your channel a few weeks ago. I'm the guy who has a name that's like unpronounceable. He's like, wait a minute, does it start with H? And I was like, yeah, that's me. And he goes, oh yeah, so I saw one of your comments about a suggestion for one of my videos, and I'm actually going to take you up on it. And I was like, oh, that's cool. I mentioned this previously, but Brett Weiss seems to specialize more in video games that are before the NES era. I said, hey, why don't you do a top 10 or top 5 video of the games that are on the ColecoVision Flashback? So the ColecoVision Flashback is a little special from your typical random dollar store flashback console. The ColecoVision Flashback also includes multiple homebrew games that are otherwise rather difficult to obtain. And I believe they're pretty expensive if you do come across them. So that's one of the advantages to having this flashback. It also has maintained and actually increased in price over the years. I think the flashback came out in like 2014. And of course you can't pick it up in stores any longer, but you can pick it up on eBay, the secondary market. I want to say it usually runs you like $60 to $100. And it retailed for $40, so it gives you an idea. It has gone up in price. But he said he is going to take me up on that video suggestion, so I look forward to seeing that. I do have to say that Omnibus is beautiful. I do have some footage of that, and I nearly bought that. I actually told myself, oh, I need to go back there and buy that book, and I never did. So I guess shame on me, but he does have a website, and I suppose I can always order it off his website. Brett Weiss, nice guy. Also, he did have a panel. His panel was entitled The Great Video Game Crash of 1983 from Someone Who Was There. The panel was great. It was a very informal panel. He was very open to questions, so asked a few questions there. Again, they had a professional video crew there, and I imagine that the panel will go up on YouTube at some point in time. So if you're interested about the video game crash, he has some great anecdotes about growing up during the crash as a teenager. I do remember one question that I asked him, just to give you a little more info about this panel. So he was talking about, of course, the video game crash growing up in the early 80s, and mentioned that one of his biggest retro video game collecting mistakes was that he threw away all the cardboard boxes from these Coleco and television games. Like, the boxes, I believe, were close to or at pristine condition. It wasn't like he would get the game and then immediately throw away the box. No, he kept the box for years. And I think it was in the late 80s, he was like, I want to save some space. These boxes take up a lot of space. I'm just going to throw them all away. And he did. He really regrets that because he mentioned that some of those boxes now are actually worth more than the games themselves because the boxes are so difficult to find. Apparently, the boxes that he kept were in very good condition. That's unfortunate. So as a follow-up to his story, I was like, well, what was the best collecting-related decision? And he was like, it was actually being open to other consoles. And he explained that when he went out on a game hunting, so to speak, and this is again in the 80s, and he says he was going to yard sales and finding super cheap stuff. And he said, you know what, if it was cheap, I just bought it. Even if I may not have had the console or didn't really recognize it, I was open to exploring other consoles. And I've actually experienced that myself, is being open to other consoles. So, for instance, when the Super Nintendo NES really started getting expensive, I was like, I'm going to start looking into the PS1. I already had a PS1, or at least a PS2, and I grew up with the PS1, so I wasn't foreign to it. I still had a small collection from my childhood, and I started building up my PS1 collection. And then I kind of moved to the Master System. I did this, I did that. I even got a Turbo Duo CD at one point in time, which I eventually sold, and I kind of wish I hung on to it because it's quite a pricey system. But in any case, I know where he was coming from, and so I appreciate that response. So that was Brett Weiss. If you are into video game literature, video game history, check out his store. Check out his YouTube video. I love his YouTube videos because they remind me of YouTube circa 2009. Just a laid-back guy. The production value is not super high, but that's fine. What I care about is the content, and the content's high. He does some top 10s. I'm a sucker for top 10s. He also focuses on a period of gaming that I'm not as familiar with, so I'm kind of learning as I go. If you know or want to know about Intellivision, ColecoVision, he might be a YouTube channel to check out. Moving on, going back to the show floor, I ran into the developer of Doodle World. He had a booth. If you're not familiar with Doodle World, this is a new-ish NES game. It's about a year old now, but it was a game that he developed for a game jam. And I actually saw this game before on itch.io. And I want to say I even brought it to Critical Failure's attention for TCR. It's designed to be for kids. It's based on a doodle that his daughter made when she was 5 years old. And so he took that doodle and he made it the main character of this platforming NES game. A whole lot of fun. I really think that my young daughter would enjoy it. And he had the games out there to purchase. It was $50, but for $50, it was a real NES cartridge, works on real hardware, even works on some of the clone hardware. And one of my questions was, does it work on a Retron 5? And he's like, unfortunately it doesn't, but supposedly they're supposed to come out with an update to make it work. I suspect that since Hyperkin has not come out with an update in the last 2 or 3 years, they haven't come out with an update for this game. So I suspect it still doesn't work. But that was okay, because he's like, well, we do have a digital copy on our itch.io site. And I was like, oh, okay. I was kind of talking to him, and I was like, I bet you I can create an IPS patch and patch it into the Retron 5. So I might do that when I get home. The ROM-only version is $10. It actually comes with 2 different versions of the ROM, believe it or not. He said one of the versions is a homebrew mapper that unfortunately doesn't like to play nice with some of the emulators. I believe it will work if you flash it onto an NES cart, but for whatever reason, the emulators don't like it. So then he actually came out with another ROM. He says it plays exactly the same, but it just uses a different mapper. And that one tends to work better for the emulators. So that's really cool that he actually had the I don't know if it was forethought or if he learned the hard way, but in any case, he actually has both of them on his website, and it's a package deal for $10. I think that's a pretty good deal. Nice guy. His whole family was there, even his daughter who came up with the main character. And to be honest, that was probably one of the more fun games that I played on the show floor. Was Doodle World for the NES. He had a top loader there, so that was cool. Of course, you got your anime, your comic books, your video games. One booth that I did think was a little different. It's not my thing. I can see my wife liking this. It was this lady who made journals, but it wasn't just like your leather back paper journal. No, it was like made from recycled paper, different textures, using junk mail. It sounds kind of weird, but it was really cool. It's something a little different beyond your anime and video games. And of course, there were booths for cosplayers. I will talk about that in the cosplay section. So let's move on to the Classic Tetris World Championship. Probably one of the highlights of the ATG Expo, and I suspect this was a reason why a good chunk of the people were there. These guys were wizards. You heard the song Pinball Wizards by The Who? No, these guys were Tetris wizards. It was insane watching these guys play Tetris, and I got quite a bit of video of them doing it. I also got a shot of all the Tetris stations that they set up before people started playing. They had, I want to say, at least 10 different stations. So they had a CRTV with a toaster NES and a copy of Tetris, all set up in a row. Eventually they started filling up with people who were trying to qualify for this World Championship, or at least national. Well, yeah, I guess it is a World Championship according to them. And this was the Southern qualifying match. And I didn't see everybody play, but I did stay for the finals, which was one of the last events last night. And they had it on the main stage, and they had a huge big screen TV which showed the displays of the CRTs on the stage. And it was serious. It looked like they had a judge who sat behind them. I'm not sure exactly how you would cheat on something like that. And then they had this like professional level announcer who basically called it play-by-play on the loudspeaker as we're watching it, which was kind of surreal. It was as if you were at a boxing match or a football game or something. It was cool. A lot of fun. These kids were amazing too, and they were on the younger side. I suspect that they were like high school students, maybe college, maybe even younger than high school. I don't know. They look kind of young to me, but maybe I'm just getting old. A lot of respect for that. It was amazing. Hopefully if I do put together a montage, I can show you some of that. Let's move beyond the Classic Tetris Championships. That was going on like all day. Like all day on the show floor, people were playing. And then at night, they had the final round, which was the top two guys competing head-to-head. Then they also had like a console/computer room. That was kind of neat. Not quite to the level of like the MagFest console/computer room. Well, I guess at MagFest is two separate rooms. But anyways, they had some older computers. If I was a little more attentive to the details, I would have sat down and figured out what type of computers they had. But it looked like some stuff from maybe early to mid 80s. They had multiple old computers playing Oregon Trail. Then, of course, they had your consoles. So I was hoping that they would have some of the older consoles. So again, I'm trying to explore stuff that was before the NES. But I did not see any in television. I didn't see any Coleco. Whatever. I was kind of let down by that because like surely I'll have at least one of those. But nah. The oldest thing that they had on the consoles, I think they had like an NES setup. But of course they had the N64 playing GoldenEye. Unfortunately, there weren't very many people playing GoldenEye. I would have loved to have like a 4-player match. They didn't even have 4 controllers. It was just like 2 controllers. And so when I did walk up to it, I was like, it'd be fun just to like play some of the levels single player. And one of the things I like to do is like a challenge is I will play, I don't know how familiar you are with GoldenEye, but if you played the game, you may remember the level entitled Train. That level has very tight corridors, and I like to play it with enemy rocket launchers and then all guns. The player has all the guns to choose from, and I want to say I also play with infinite ammo. So I have infinite ammo, but then your opponents all have rocket launchers. So you're in these narrow corridors, and essentially the idea is to take out your opponents before they can fire a single rocket. Because if they can fire one rocket, even close to you, you're dead meat. Unfortunately, they didn't have those cheats unlocked yet, and I was like, So I was like, it's just going to be a pass for me. But they did have N64. They had multiple GameCubes set up. They had your Mario Kart, and they had Smash Bros. I think there was even a Smash Bros tournament. And then they had like a Genesis playing Mortal Kombat. They also had a Guitar Hero Station. But my favorite part of this room was the Quake 3 Arena. Similar to like what MacFest had with a LAN game playing a first-person shooter, they had Quake 3 Arena set up in a local area network with Emacs. Yeah, you heard me right, with old school Macintosh computers. So I was like, oh, okay. That was a lot of fun. I eventually wandered over to the tabletop area. They had a company there that was showcasing one of the games that they were in the process of publishing. And it was called Dino Dodge. And it was a fun game. I sat down with, it wasn't a developer, it was one of the guys on the publishing team. I think he was a marketer by trade. And he like sat down and taught me the game. He played it with me. And it was fun, but man, it was complicated. I think I would have had a bit of a hard time trying to figure this out on my own, just reading the instructions. But once I got the hang of it, I was like, okay, I can see how this would be fun, especially if you had like 4 people playing and they knew what they were doing. If you're into tabletop gaming, you may want to check out Dino Dodge. And then, of course, there was Magic the Gathering. They had a pre-release there, so the pre-release was happening this weekend. I didn't participate, but what I did hear before I came was that they were going to just have kind of freestyle commander matches. And I'm like, okay, I'm up for that. And one of the decisions I made before I left was like, oh yeah, I'm going to grab my commander deck. Got that in the bag, brought it with me to the con. I saw some signups because they were also having a commander competition. I'm like, I just want to play for fun. So they had like a casual sign up. I think there was one person on the list, and I was like, oh. So I signed up, and I talked to the guy who was kind of running the Magic area. I was like, hey, where's this other guy? And they're like, oh, I think he either left. I think he had left at the time. And I was like, okay. And this was a trend throughout the whole con. There really wasn't very many people there, which in a way was kind of cool because I'm so used to places being crowded. Quick tangent. So I'll get back to the Magic the Gathering. But since we're talking about not many crowds being there, and I'm used coming from a city and then going to bigger conferences, I'm used to the crowds, right? And I'm not a huge fan of the crowds. I decide to go off-site for lunch because there's this taco place that we actually don't have where I live, but I really like their tacos. And I'm like, oh, sweet, I'm going to go there. It's like, and when I'm thinking of leaving, it's like 12 o'clock, and I'm like, oh, I probably shouldn't leave at 12, so I'm going to get there during rush hour. So I think I burned like another 30 minutes, and I'm like, I'm hungry, I'm just going to go. I get there, and it's probably close to 1 by the time I get there. And I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to have to stand in line, I'm going to have to wait a while. No, the place was like abandoned, and I was like, it was me and maybe like half a dozen other people. There wasn't even a line to get food. And I was like, wow, that's kind of nice. So I got my tacos, happy about that. But yeah, not a whole lot of people there. I suspect some of it had to do with the weather. It was cold and windy. It was not fun outside. And maybe that just kept people indoors. But then again, this is a video game conference. You're indoors the whole time. But I don't know. It was also their first year. But let's go back to Magic the Gathering. I came back multiple times to the tabletop area. I kept checking in with the guy. I was like, hey, I see there's more names on the casual Magic. Are they here? He goes, oh yeah, that first guy, he's here, but now he's playing the pre-release. which was going on until like 6 o'clock. And that was part of the reason I didn't want to play, because I would basically be sacrificing almost the entire afternoon to just playing Magic. And then, so that guy was playing a pre-release, and then a few other guys signed up, and I'm like, hey, where are those guys? And they're like, oh, they left, but they said they're coming back and they're bringing more people with them. And I'm like, okay, cool. So eventually I check back again, and I'm like, hey, did those guys show up? They're like, oh yeah, they're right over there on that table. And I'm like, oh, awesome. So I walk up, I was like, hey, can I play with you guys? They're like, oh yeah, sure. And I kind of felt bad, because they were playing like a one-on-one match. I think they had just started, but they like scrapped their whole match to include me in a new game. So that was really, excuse me, that was really nice of them. Let me get some water. All right. So we start playing a three-player round of Commander. We probably play for like 10 minutes or so, and then one of their other friends shows up. And then we decide just to scrap that game so we can play with 4 people, which we did. And we probably played for like half an hour, 45 minutes. We were able to knock off one of the guys, so then it came down to 3 of us. And what happened was someone played one of these board wiping cards. However, again, you may be listening to this and have no idea about Magic, but I have a card in my Commander deck. It's called Divine Intervention, and it protects you from these board wipes. So the guy plays a board wipe to try to clear the floor, and I'm like, no, I'm safe, I'm playing Divine Intervention. So then that put me like way ahead of everybody. After about 1 or 2 rounds, post board wipe, the guys were like, you know what, you're probably just going to win, and we don't want to waste another 10 or 15 minutes to watch you win. We're just going to resign, and we'll just say you won the game. So I was like, all right, that's cool. Whatever. Plus, I think they wanted to play in the console room. So I'm like, I'm cool with that. We can scrap the match. So technically, I think I got a W. And then afterwards, this was probably even more fun than playing Magic, is we went to the console room and we got on the land Quake 3 Arena game. We probably got like 7 odd people to play. And I think that was the most that was there the whole time. So that was one of the highlights for me, was just sitting there playing Quake Arena with those guys. Because we had the 4 of us from the Commander game. And then their friend who was playing in the pre-release came. And then some other guy, I guess that was their friend, came. And then we had at least 1 or 2 randos that showed up. So, can't beat like 7-8 player Quake 3 Arena. That was pretty much it for the console room, tabletop, as well as the show floor. Although I will say, after the Quake Arena stuff, that's when I headed over and watched the Tetris final battle. And then I'll briefly talk about cosplay. Cosplay's not my thing. They did have some great cosplayers out there, especially the Ghostbusters. Those guys were great. They were all suited up. They didn't just have 1 Ghostbusters truck. They had 2. So that was pretty cool. They actually brought one of them on the show floor. Then the other was in the parking lot. I've got footage of both. They had a G.I. Joe team. They were super cool. Chatted with them. They also had something called a Saber Guild, so like lightsabers. I think they had like a lightsaber building activity, or they had some activity. I didn't see it. And then they had yet another Star Wars group. So you may be familiar with this one if you've been to any of these like Comic-Con type things. And this is the 501st Legion. And I have seen them at MagFest before, and apparently they're at least nationwide, if not worldwide. They're a costuming group that also raises money for charity. And then they also had a band that was going to play. By then, like, there was going to be a 30-minute break, and then the band was going to start. I did give thought to saying, okay, well, maybe I'll go and get dinner and then come back. But at that point in time, my headache was really wearing on me. And I was pretty tired, so I was like, I'm just going to pick up some food and call it a day. That concludes ATG Expo, at least for Saturday. They have a whole new day, which is starting right about now. I'm going to miss it, but that's okay. Would I return? Yeah, I think I might go again. Lastly, let's just talk about some stuff that maybe could be improved upon. Well, one is, this is their first year, right? So you got to work out the kinks. There weren't a whole lot of people that showed up, and I think that's just the nature of starting out. To give you an idea, I suspect that there were probably... Man, I'm sorry, guys. I got to get some more water. Hold on here. Okay. I suspect that there were maybe 300 to 400 people that were coming and going for a small to medium-sized convention center. So it did look a little sparse. But I think that'll just improve with time and as word gets out. I wish they had an arcade room. There was one arcade cabinet that I remember in the entire convention. It wasn't even in the console room. It just happened to be on the show floor. And I think it was part of somebody's booth. It was one of those like old Neo Geo arcades, but then they like transformed it into a single cab. And to be honest, I don't even know the game that was playing on it. I did play it for like 5 or 10 minutes. It was like a Street Fighter style fighting game. And it was fun. I was not very good, but it was fun for 10 minutes. So I wish they had an arcade room. And I kind of thought they were, because they did mention arcades on their website. It just didn't do it for me. I was hoping for at least, 5 to 10 arcades. But overall, I think it was a good conference. As I said, I would probably try to go back again next year. And the guy who put it on, who, came up to give the awards for the Tetris tournament, and then also emceed the cosplay competition, did mention that they were going to try to do this again. I think that's good news. Thanks for joining me. Thanks for sticking around. I know it was a lot. I know it wasn't very professional. I know my voice is cracking. And that's because I don't typically talk this much. But thank you. Thank you for listening. If critical failure happens to put this on TCR, thank you, CF. So, keep rolling retro. This is Hemrawc. Peace.
Hemrawc, always a pleasure, man. Thanks so much for recording and taking the time to edit that. Just to give everybody some perspective, that was just about an hour and 45 minutes, but broken up into, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different clips pasted together? Yeah, that's full podcast right there. Thank you so much. And whatever it is you're dealing with this week, I hope it goes well for you. Take care of yourselves. I'll see you next week.